Hi, I'm Carol Livingston from Dynamics Connections, and on this ISV Talks, we have our special guest, Jeremy Boogaart. He's the Senior VP of Product at Cavallo, formerly SalesPad. And on this part one of ISV Talks with Cavallo, we talk about the reasons that SalesPad rebranded as Cavallo, where they got the name Cavallo, and some of the challenges facing distributors and supply chain. Next up is Jeremy. So welcome, Jeremy. Thanks for being a guest on ISV Talks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Carol. Appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, a lot of things have been changing. So maybe we can start with just a quick introduction of yourself and maybe tell a little bit about Cavallo.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Jeremy Boogaart. I'm the VP or product leader here at Cavallo. I've been in the Microsoft space in and around for about 15 or 16 years now. I've done a little bit of everything from consulting to development and sales, little bit of everything in between. So yeah, it's been a good ride, and it's been fun kind of working on GP for that long, and now also working on Business Central.
Maybe you can tell me a little bit about what's going on with Cavallo. So it started out as SalesPad, been around about almost 20 years now. It's Cavallo. So can you start with that? Like, why rebrand now?
Yeah, absolutely. We were SalesPad for pretty much the entire time until last June. So that's what we started with. That's what I was hired on to. And I started when I think there was only one other employee, so it was pretty small. So SalesPad is near and dear to my heart. I always joked that I should get a SalesPad tattoo, and maybe that's still in the cards, but it's a little dated now. So maybe I'm glad I didn't go pull the trigger on that one. But yeah, it's still near and dear to my heart. I still call it SalesPad occasionally, mess it up on calls. But the reason really was, what we started with 15 years ago was very targeted for GP for sales order entry. Our early mantra was, faster, better sales order entry for GP. And it was definitely a need for GP. It struggled pretty mightily in that area. And then after, year after year, we added more features, and we expanded into purchasing and inventory and warehouse management, and pretty much everything on the operational side of GP we were also doing. And so at the end of it, we would get also, just looking back at history, early 2000s, iPads didn't exist. So nobody had any preconception about what a pad was. And then suddenly, Apple stepped in and made an iPad, and everybody thought pad was some sort of just an iPad or an iOS app. And so that was added some confusion, and Salesforce has become much more prominent since the early 2000s. And so, inevitably what happened is, in sales cycles, when you meet somebody for the first time, or someone pulls out your business card after an event, they have these preconceived notions of what SalesPad is. Is it an iPad app? Is it a Salesforce add-on? Like, all these things applied, and none of them were what we really did. And, while we do a lot in sales still, we're moving a lot more into areas of analytics, machine learning. All these other areas that we're adding products have nothing to do with sales or sales pads. The SalesPad name originally was off of the old pads that you used to put on the wall, that you would fill out.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what it's really, it became a little bit dated. It became a little bit limiting. And so we wanted to come up with a name that was a little more abstract, that would allow us to grow. It's a challenge to build a brand. And that's why early on, it's really nice to have a name that's descriptive, and so people can look at it and know what you do. Well, when that stops being the only thing you do, it can start to detract from what you're doing. So now, we've been around for a while. We have the time to kind of carve this new brand out. So we wanted to grab a name that meant something to us, but also gave us the room to grow and expand. And so Cavallo is I'll give you the quick version of the story. We're headquartered out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. In Grand Rapids, we have the benefit of a great philanthropist, Fred Meyer, who owns the Meyer stores, grocery stores chain. So if you're from the Midwest or, in that general area, you'll know what I'm talking about. And he has a sculpture park and garden in town here that he supports. And in it is a large horse that was designed by Leonardo da Vinci. And so Leonardo da Vinci originally was going to build it for the Duke of Milan, and never came to fruition. He built models for it, and then Italy was invaded by France, and they needed all of the iron and brass that they'd hoarded away to make the statue, to make cannons. And so everything, it just never happened, and it was kind of dead to history. And then they found the plans for it in I think it was in the 60s in Spain, and someone tried to build it, it didn't happen. And then another artist a few years ago, I guess maybe 20 years ago ish, got the support of Fred Meyer to build it. And they built two of them. And one of them is here in Grand Rapids, and the other one is in Milan. And so, Da Vinci is a character, or a historical figure that we have a lot of respect for. Talented inventor, very productive person, has succeeded in almost anything that he put his hand to. While he was planning this Cavallo, this Il Gran Cavallo statue painted the last summer. So, I mean, there's a person who just can't stop, being great. And so a lot of our code names and projects were named after Da Vinci inventions. So that was before we picked this name. And so it was just it was a great fit for us. It made, it speaks to, Grand Rapids, the area that we're from, and the great creativity and inventor who put it together. So that was sort of the genesis of the name and kind of why we changed. But those of you who knew us as SalesPad, were still the same people.
Yeah. So some people have asked me, have they been bought? Did they get acquired? And no, it's just it's a name change. But also, I mean, you're bringing a lot of new set of products to the market. Maybe you can talk to us about kind of the vision. Distribution cloud, analytics cloud, and give us a little bit of what the vision is.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we have a rich history in GP with SalesPad and all of our products over there. And, it became clear a number of years ago that we were going to have to adapt and move and support other platforms. And so, we've been kind of watching the Microsoft space for a while. I remember I've been going to AX shows for a number of years, NAV shows for a number of years, trying to figure out what we were going to do in the other parts of the Microsoft ecosystem. And I would say kind of in that, mid, 20 teens, it was or early 20 teens, it was fairly uncertain. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. What was Microsoft's cloud platform going to be? They were all on-prem at that point.
Right.
But it was clear that was the direction everything was heading. And, when BC started off as Project Madeira, even then it was unclear. They were almost competing with QuickBooks with their pricing and their feature set and messaging. And, we weren't sure if down market is not the place we really wanted to go. And so was that going to be the thing for us? And so we kind of sat on the fence for a while trying to decide if that was going to be the platform. And then became clear maybe 3 or 4 years ago that, Microsoft, this was going to be NAV in the cloud, and it was going to be the successor to SL, NAV, GP, all the rest. And so at that point, we started to, think a little bit more heavily about what our answer was going to be and what we were going to design. And so I think it was our user conference is every year in August. And last August, I sat it was virtual because of COVID. So I didn't sit on stage. I sat in front of a camera and, told our customers that we had a plan and we were going to go, write a product for Business Central. And that's what we did. So we're working on that. You mentioned Distribution Cloud is our sort of similar successor to SalesPad for Business Central. So it's our distribution, customer management, CRM, order entry, all of those components. So it will have a migration path from SalesPad to Distribution Cloud. So SalesPad plus GP to Distribution Cloud plus Business Central. And it will do a lot of those same things. So customer management, CRM, task management. We do workflow and automation, order entry, inventory visibility, reporting. All of those things are on the roadmap to be completed. And we're going to be releasing that commercially at the end of this month. But we have a really aggressive roadmap.
This month being November.
November, yes.
2021.
Yes, exactly. A couple of weeks from now in November.
Wow.
2021.
So you've been working on this for a while then. It's not just, it sounds like over a year.
Yeah. So last year we wanted to make sure that we were not just duplicating SalesPad. SalesPad was created to specifically meet the needs or cover the deficiencies of GP. So we complemented GP. We worked out of the same tables. There was no synchronization. And we wanted to do that same thing for Business Central, but also pay it the respect it was due for what it's good at. It's a different platform. It has different lineage, has different strengths, different weaknesses. And so we spent a long time. I think we did about 120 interviews in the fourth quarter of last year with customers, partners, our existing customers, to really get at the heart of, what made SalesPad great, what were the most important parts of SalesPad to start with, and then, what were the weak points of Business Central, and where could we add value? And, it honestly was, it was similar to GP, and it felt similar to GP in that, it had great functionality, it had great bones. In a lot of ways, it's a lot easier to work with than GP. It's got a much better API interface and like programmer interface for us in general to supplement. So that part's been wonderful. But it also, suffers from a lot of the same things that are just ERP problems. Our calling, all we have to do is serve distributors. That's our only mission, is to make distribution more efficient. And so we get to take a single-minded view on, improving those metrics, improving those processes for those employees. And, Microsoft and it has to support everything from insurance companies, financial services, to service companies, all those things. And, obviously a company with no physical goods operates, very, very differently than a company that only sells physical goods. And so, we get to take that view and improve it for that specific use case. And so there are things, about account management, about click efficiency. The Business Central interface is really consistent and it's really readable, which is great. It's very discoverable by, new users. Those are good things. But at volume, it kind of falls down a little bit. It's tough to use if you're doing tons of transactions. If you're pumping through 200 to 500 orders a day, if you're doing, that many cash receipts, if all those things start to wear on you a little bit. And, there are customizations and things that you can do to make Business Central better. And there are certainly companies that are successful doing that. But, part of what we do is, we can do the best version of that, and with a really low, time to value. So our application is, set up to be implemented quickly, to serve those needs. And so we can do a better job quicker than it would take to customize.
And you've got the experience of working with distributors. You can create a lot more plug and play, configurations. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yep. And time to value is one of those important things I think sometimes gets overlooked. Sure, you could customize it to do it, or you could, do a giant project to gather all of your possible user cases and use cases and, implement against those. But, I think if you've been in the industry for a while, you've seen those projects that go 3 years because everything has to be perfect and we have to implement and test and validate everything. And then by the time you actually get to that, your business, the people are no longer the same and the business needs have actually changed. And then you get into the perpetual implementation cycle. And so, it's a lot better if you can get there quicker.
Yeah.
It's a huge risk that I think is undervalued a lot in sales cycles, where people, just look at the dollar totals and say, well, these look about the same. Why don't we just do it all here?
Thank you for listening to part 1 of my interview with Jeremy Boogaart, Senior VP of Product of Cavallo. Please look for part 2 of ISV Talks, where I continue my interview with Jeremy Boogaart of Cavallo. Thank you for listening.